Hi and welcome to this paper 2 overview for the media section of A-level sociology. This is section B3 on your paper 2 for AQA sociology. I'm the sociology guy. You can follow me on Twitter at the sociology guy. You can follow me on Instagram, the sociology guy, and you can also follow. You can also go to my website, thesociologyguide.com, where there's a lot of free revision resources, mind maps, knowledge organizers, exam tips, checklists, model answers, those type of things that will help you through revising. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to look at the media specification. But first of all, quick disclaimer, I have no knowledge of the A-level exams. I don't know what's on them. I'm not involved in the writing of the A-level exams. I've written the questions, all the questions that I write and the items that I write are written by me. They're not written by AQA. They're not part of their copyrighted material. What I do is I base them on question types that have not appeared on any of the specimen papers or the A-level or AS level exams up until June 2019. The essay structure I use is one way of answering the question. Other approaches may still score full marks. And what this is not a prediction site, okay? What I do on these videos is I look to prepare you for questions that you may not have practiced. Lots of students will be going through past papers. Lots of students will be going through some of the specimen papers as well. You may have had mock exams on some of these questions, but there are some questions that because they haven't appeared, you may not have seen them and may not be aware of them. And what I will do is I will highlight some of these and look to do videos answering a couple of them as well. So let's have a quick look at the specification outline for media. This is taken directly from AQA's specification. It says the students are expected to be familiar with sociological explanations of the following content. First of all, you need to know the new media and the significance for an understanding of the role of the media in contemporary society. How has the media changed? Okay, the difference between old media and new media, obviously things like digitization, convergence, interactivity, participatory cultures. You need to know those things, and you need to know sort of like the kind of debates between the neophiliacs who sort of like think that the advent of new media is a good thing, and your cultural pessimists who think that actually it's diluting our culture in some way. You also need to look at the relationship between ownership and control of the media, globalization and popular culture. So the relationship between ownership and control is sort of like the pluralist idea versus the Marxist idea versus the postmodern ideas. The media, globalization and popular culture very much in the postmodern domain there. So like how is the media shaping popular culture in an era of globalization? So the idea that, you know, channels like YouTube, channels like social media sites like Facebook, how are they spreading certain messages across the globe? You also need to be able to look at the process of selection and presentation of the content of the news. Some of you will have already done this with things like crime and deviance, where you looked at news values. Essentially, this is what this looks at: is why do news outlets, news agencies, why do they pick certain pieces of news to present rather than other pieces? You also need to look at media representations of age, social class, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, and disability. There tends to be a lot more information on things like social class, ethnicity, and gender than there is on sexuality, age, and disability. What we've seen so far on the papers, which I'll go through in a minute, is that some of the questions like age, sexuality, disability may appear on smaller questions. Social class, ethnicity, and gender tend to be the larger ones. But you can never be too certain, so it's worth revising each one of those different representations. And the relationship between the media, their content and presentation, and their audiences. So this is the different models of media: the hypodermic approach, reception analysis approach, selective filter models, things like that. So the format of the exams on this paper, sort of like there's 3 questions. The first question is always an outline and explain, and this will try to link 2 different parts of the specification. So this could be how the growth of new media has impacted on representations of gender. So it could be things like sort of like things like #MeToo, talking about sort of like how women are represented as sexual objects and how the new media has changed that. The second question there would be a 10-mark applying from the item and analyze. Now this is the question where, because you see an item, you have to take 2 different hooks from the item, and you need to be able to develop those. If you do not refer to the item in any way, you're not going to score more than 3 out of 10. If you do it once, the maximum you'll get is 7 out of 10. you need to be able to, in each of the 2 paragraphs that you write, use the item in some way. You need to reference the item and then develop that hook into a reason why something has happened. And 20 mark evaluate questions. Now this is usually either the contribution of a theory, so functionalist, Marxist, feminist, or in this case things like pluralism, neophiliac approach, or it could be a debate. Okay, so some of the key debates that I've looked at over on the website is the growth of new media beneficial to society? So this is the neophiliac approach versus the cultural pessimists. How do we select what is the news? So generally news values and looking at all the different reasons why the news that we see is the news that is presented to us. Has globalization allowed the media to influence popular culture? Okay, another question that you could get. How do audiences interpret the media? So the active versus the passive models, if you like. So things like on the passive side, so like the hypodermic approach versus the kind of more active approaches, things like the reception analysis model. How are people represented by the media? So this is age, gender, class, sexuality, disability, ethnicity. Is the new media making society more democratic? And who controls the media and for what purpose? So there's some of the key debates that you would need to be aware of when you're going into this exam. Now I'm going to look at some of the questions that have come up on the 2 specimen papers and 2 full papers that we've seen so far. So we'll go through these one by one. I'll try and give you some answers for them. So outline and explain 2 ways in which ownership of the media may affect audiences. Well, if the media is owned by, for example, so like, if it's owned by the ruling class, the content that they're going to push forward very much reflects their values and their ideas. That could be one way. The apply and analyze question, 2 factors which influence which stories are selected for inclusion in the news. Again, sort of like look at things like news values. So you could break this down into things like proximity. Is it quite close to us? Is it spectacular? Is there a certain threshold on some of these ideas? Evaluate the view that media portray women in a very stereotypical way. So obviously you would put forward some of the arguments that women are objectified, women are seen as being in domestic roles, and then what you might do is you might evaluate that with some of the more contemporary ways in which women are presented in the media. Specimen paper 2, 2 problems involved in the study and the possible effects of the media on their audiences. One of the main ways in which the media is studied is through content analysis, so you're looking at sort of the strengths and weaknesses of that method. Analyze 2 reasons why governments seek to influence or control the output of the media. Okay, so this is things like censorship, and this could be in not only censorship, but it can also be regulation. So we've seen a lot of stuff on things like Cambridge Analytica, and we've seen sort of like a lot of stuff on Leave EU. Just today, sort of like Boris Johnson has been summoned to answer questions about sort of like his involvement in misleading the public in that campaign. And the evaluate question is the view that the output of the media serves ruling class interests. So very much a Marxist idea. You could maybe kind of you could maybe sort of like evaluate that with some of the pluralist ideas as well. On to June 2017, which is the first full sitting of this exam. So these are real live questions, if you like. 2 ways in which the new media may be creating a global popular culture. So you look at things like new media as things like YouTube. You can talk about things like Netflix and how they then create a global popular culture. 2 reasons why the media often portray minority ethnic groups negatively. You could look at things like moral panics. You can look at the idea, sort of like some of the ideas of Hall and Gilroy, and the idea of myth of black criminality. And the 20-mark question on that one was evaluate the pluralist view of the ownership and control of the media. This would be the idea is that the media reflects the needs and wants of the people. So the reason why we get X Factor on a Saturday night is because lots of people want to watch it. Okay, so that's one view, and of course the other side of the view is the Marxist view, where sort of like it's trying to pass on a dominant ideology as part of the ISA. So you're looking at people like Miliband, Marcuse, Althusser. Then you've got 2 reasons why the news may, in 2018, this is last year's paper, 2 reasons why the news may portray young people negatively. So you could also look there again at this idea of moral panics, young people, sort of like when they have behavior, when they display behaviors that are against the norms and values of society, society acts against them in the form of way of sort of like being moral entrepreneurs. A good example of this is rave culture. 2 ways in which the new media may affect the political process. Ideas like petitions. We can talk about this idea of fake news. Of course, this was an item question, so it would give you a couple of hints there. And then evaluate the view that the media have a direct and immediate effect on their audiences. Big strong hint there at the hypodermic model, maybe a little bit of Bandura, and then what you would do is you would evaluate that with some of the other models, cultural effects model, reception analysis model, things like that. Okay, so let's have a quick look at sort of like what hasn't appeared. 10 markers, very, very difficult to say what hasn't appeared. 10 markers can be pretty much on anything because they link from two sides of the spec. They're very, very difficult. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up some one-page worksheets on there on these ideas. So sort of like what we might do is how has new media influenced gender relationships, or how we can link new media to the different parts of the spec, how we can link ownership and control to different parts of the spec as well. And they'll be available to download on my website, the Sociology Guide, and I'll also kind of tweet the pictures of them. The 20 markers, again, it's pretty difficult with only four papers gone by. There's 5 different spec points. One thing I would say is there's not been much on this paper so far on social class and media. Now, if this exam was written today, I think social class and media will be a real hot topic with the cancelling of Jeremy Kyle over sort of like Jeremy Kyle, obviously the incident that happened with sort of a male taking his own life after being on Jeremy Kyle. But the idea of Jeremy Kyle, we use that in social class and media in the way of sort of like what we're doing is really we're kind of making fun of the poor people. But also social class and media, you've got to remember, sort of like has impact on things like the way we report the royalty, the way we report the elites, the way we report the middle class. So in there you can use some of the ideas about way politicians are represented, Boris Johnson and his delightful gaffes where he's just seen as being eccentric when actually he's being out and out racist. The role of new media and its influence on society. There's nothing much been asked on new media apart from in the link 10-mark questions. This could be a nice question where it asks about whether the new media has a beneficial impact on society. So it would be the neophiliac versus the cultural pessimist debate. There's been nothing on disability or sexuality so far. Again, I think they're more likely to probably be to crop up in 10 markers because they are quite small sections. But never say never. Certainly never say never with AQA. They have in the past asked 20-mark questions on things like state crime. So I would sort of like probably make sure that you've prepped disability or sexuality as well. And the marks are still the post-modern views of the media. I think the two that I'm going to try and focus on and do some essays on are social class and media and the role of new media and its influence on society. Again, these are not predictions. These are just simply questions that I think students may struggle with if they've not seen them before, they've not seen the type of this question before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get up a couple of videos there before the 4th of June to help students out with those. Thanks for watching and good luck for your exams.